Hello again. Welcome back to Health Score. Today we are in the category of nutrition. We are talking about whole grains. The recommendation is to eat 3 servings of whole grains every day instead of refined grains. Let's start with some definitions. A whole grain retains the bran and the germ, which are the fiber and the nutrients of the grain. A refined grain has the bran and the germ removed, and you're just left with starch. A comparison of whole grains and refined grains can be seen here when we look at brown rice and white rice. Brown rice retains the outer bran and germ. White rice has it removed. Fiber content in brown rice is 7 times greater than white. Another feature about whole grains that makes them optimal is when you eat them in their whole kernel form. There are a plethora of whole grain products out there, like breads and pastas and cereals. And those are better than refined grain, but because of labeling in the US, something with 51% whole grains and 49% sugar or refined grains is still considered whole grain. And so, besides the labeling problem, the fact is that when you eat a whole kernel whole grain instead of a whole grain that's been milled into flour, the surface area of the whole kernel whole grain is much less, which means that it takes your digestive system a lot longer to break down a whole grain compared to a refined grain or a whole grain that's been milled into flour. And that slow time of digestion and the fact that not all the grain is actually even absorbed when it's from its whole kernel form turns out to be very important to health. So when we're talking about whole grains, we're talking about the grain retaining its bran and its germ, and we're also talking about whole grain as not being milled into flour. The literature on whole grains is strong, and the benefit of whole grains, it's really maximal at 7 servings a day, but because of some concerns that I have about that amount of carbohydrates in the diet, I'm taking a more conservative recommendation of 3 servings of whole grains per day. And that is consistent with a lot of the literature that 3 servings is where we get a maximal benefit or a significant benefit. How exactly do whole grains improve our health? Well, like I said, there's a lot of fiber in whole grains. It's probably the greatest source of fiber in the typical diet. And fiber has a plethora of health benefits. When we eat a meal that's high in fiber, fiber takes longer to break down. That means we don't get a rapid rise in blood sugar. When we don't get a rapid rise in blood sugar, it means that we don't get a rapid rise in insulin. When we don't get a rapid rise in insulin, it means that we're able to burn the calories we eat. And insulin would otherwise tell us to store that energy as fat. But if we don't cause blood sugar spikes, insulin is never released, and we can burn the fuel as energy instead of storing it as fat. The other benefit of this, besides preventing obesity, is that with repeated spikes in insulin from a refined grain diet, you become insulin resistant, which means that the body no longer responds to insulin. The pancreas has to produce more and more of it, and then you finally become insulin resistant, and that is how diabetes develops. So the fiber, by moderating the blood sugar rises after meals, prevents obesity and diabetes. As if that wasn't enough, fiber also can lower cholesterol, LDL cholesterol in particular. In the colon, the body will reabsorb bile acids, and bile acids are a building block for bad cholesterol or LDL cholesterol. What fiber does is it binds to the bile acids, so the bile acids are excreted in the stool rather than being reabsorbed. And lowering LDL cholesterol lowers risk for heart disease. Next, and finally for fiber, fiber can lead to the removal of damaged cells and carcinogens that are in the foods we eat, and this lowers the risks of gastrointestinal cancers. And finally, whole grains, not just fiber, but the entire whole grain, has been shown to decrease inflammatory markers. And inflammation is a common pathway for most chronic diseases. So how do we get 3 servings of whole grains in our diet? First step is to make your grains granular, and that means cutting out the grains in your diet that have been milled or refined. We started refining grains since the agricultural revolution about 10,000 years ago. Humans have been on the earth for over 2 million years, and our digestive systems, frankly, are not evolved to handle the rapid rises in blood sugar that occur when we eat grains that are milled into flour or otherwise refined. And this means a pretty radical change in diet for a lot of people. I'm talking about avoiding not only refined grains, but anything that's been milled into flour. And this includes granola, bread, refined or whole, any kind of baked goods, bagels, beer, which is just wheat. It's even has even less fiber than refined grain. It's just liquid. Pasta, even whole grain pasta, noodles, even whole grain noodles, white rice, cereal, even whole grain cereal, tortillas, chips, tacos, chapati. If you're eating a grain, it should not look anything other than granular. And that's a major change for a lot of people. What to substitute? So I recommend coming up with a meal plan that allows you to get 3 servings of whole grains per day. How I do this is 1 cup, half a cup is a serving of whole grains. So I have 1 cup of a whole grain on salad, and then half a cup of overnight oats as a dessert after dinner. That affords me 3 half cups of whole grains or 3 servings of whole grains per day. And finally, shop and prep ahead. So I keep in my pantry oats and a whole variety of whole grains. Because whole grains take longer to cook, it would be impractical if I were to cook grains for salad and make oats every day that I ate them. So I prep ahead. When it comes to whole grains, I start with 2 cups of any kind of raw whole grain, add salt to boiling water, add the grains, add garlic, seasoning, and pepper, and I cook for about an hour. And I store this in the fridge. This is 4 days of whole grains. Because it's easy to use, I'm likely to use it. It's as easy to make a salad with a cup of grains as it is to open up a bag of bread and take a slice. So making grains that are whole easily available and cutting the cooking time to only once or twice a week makes this a really practical solution. Overnight oats are especially easy. I take a cup of oats, add 3 cups of almond milk, add half a cup of chia seeds, and sprinkle some cinnamon on it. I put that in the fridge overnight. That's 4 days or 4 servings of overnight oats. And then with each dessert, I'll add a cup of a different kind of fruit. So I've described the importance of having whole grains in your diet, of how whole grains retain bran and germ and are best eaten in their whole kernel form. We discussed the health benefits of whole grains, both the fiber benefits and the general effect of decreasing inflammation from the entire whole grain. I recommended cutting out any kind of refined grains, any kind of milled grains, developing a meal plan that you can follow each day that affords 3 servings of whole grains per day, planning ahead by stocking your pantry with whole grains, preparing grains in batches to add to salad and as overnight oats. I hope this video was informative and helpful. I encourage you to eliminate refined and milled grains from your diet and substitute them with whole grains. I hope this video has made those steps clear and possible. Thank you very much for your time and have a great day.